So during these trying times when everyone's sort of socially isolating themselves, a lot of people are resorting to Animal Crossing New Horizons as a relief to the ongoing situation. And a lot of people are really enjoying it, myself included. I've been really just having a blast, engaging with all these cute animals, building up my island, and, paying the loan on my house and seeing all of that develop. It's just a nice, relaxing time and a much-needed respite from everything else. And so a lot of people were looking forward to this game, and generally speaking, most will agree that it is a damn good game if you're into this type of experience. But if you go and look at Metacritic, if you look at New Horizons page, you will find that the user score is lower than one might anticipate. There is a stark contrast between what critics are saying versus the user score here. And that has to do with what some of you might have heard about regarding save file restrictions and multiplayer restrictions that feel antiquated. And so a lot of people who are not pleased by these restrictions went ahead and review bombed the game, and that's why the score is a little lower than what one might expect from a title like this. So to fully detail this story, we have to go back to February 2020, when it was reported and confirmed by many people that there would be save file restrictions in Animal Crossing First Switch in New Horizons. And this is an article from Kotaku that best summarized the situation, calling this whole save file restrictions thing pretty restrictive. So here's what you need to know about that. Players can only create one island per Switch, even if they create more user accounts or buy extra copies of the game. Their save data will also be locked to the Switch it started on, with no transfers allowed between consoles. This is in stark contrast to New Leaf, which, while it did have the one save file per game restriction, it did allow players to use one 3DS and have multiple copies of New Leaf. So if you have multiple cartridges, that's multiple save files, or if you have, one digital version and one physical version, that's two save files right there. And in 3DS, you could transfer your save from one 3DS to the other. All of that is null and void in this newer New Horizons Switch game. And then this article continues, New Horizons will not support cloud saves, although Nintendo is working on a save data backup feature for the game that will launch at some unspecified point in the future. So this is definitely an inconvenience for someone like me who does own two Switches and would like to see some sort of cloud save support. I have a main sort of Switch Lite that I use to travel and the like, and just because it feels nicer in the hands. But when I'm at home, I like to use my home console Switch, the Switch Fat or whatever it's called, to play on the TV, and I'm not able to just switch between either console when I'm playing New Horizons. I had to pick the Switch Fat because it is what allows me to play both on TV and portable. So that's what I chose, but I wish I could play across both consoles without restrictions. I wish Nintendo would have found a more ideal solution that is less inconvenient for people like myself who do own two Switches and would like to switch between them. And then beyond that, you've got concerns like, what happens if my Switch gets damaged? Does that mean I lose all my progress? And what if I lose my Switch? Does that mean I cannot just, load a backup save on the cloud in a new Switch? Right now, your save file is tied to your Switch, and if anything happens to that Switch, then you lose that progress. Now, Nintendo did try to mitigate this by assuring that up to 8 registered users on a single Switch can engage with the same island, so there is local co-op multiplayer options. But if you want your own separate island, it would mean that you'd have to purchase not only your own copy of the game, but a separate Switch entirely. But, some people thought to themselves, okay, at least there is some local co-op and there is a way to play with your friends, except that comes with its own set of restrictions that makes this whole situation that much worse, as highlighted by the following Reset Era user, who kind of summarized it best. He began by saying that he loves this game and franchise. He's purchased every single mainline Animal Crossing game and was super excited to play this game with his girlfriend, share one island together. So instead of buying, two Switches and two games, they were happy with the local co-op option if it functioned the way he thought it would. But instead, the way he described it is that in New Horizons, the second islander is now a glorified visitor rather than a full participant and contributor to the island. He said right here, because I happen to be the first person to start a new game, she, his girlfriend, doesn't seem to get new DIY recipes. Those recipes being what you collect in order to be able to craft certain items. She isn't asked to help upgrade the island. She isn't invited to participate in new projects. She cannot help me with my own island projects. She isn't even allowed to check in-progress projects to see what resources are needed. Tom Nook literally tells her to ask me what I need. Very understandably, she's sad and losing interest. She may wait to save up for a second Switch, maybe a while we were hit financially by this mess, the ongoing international incident, and start her own island, or I'll just give up and start this over. Essentially, when it comes to any activities or events that will allow you to progress the island, only the first resident, as it's known, can do that. The second resident and anyone who isn't the first resident, any other players besides the first resident, are restricted in how they can progress the island in ways that really just make the second player feel like they're just a side character rather than a second inhabitant of that island, someone with whom you, together with them, can actually forge the island together. And so that's really unfortunate. That makes the save file situation that much worse, because the local co-op doesn't really allow the second player to have the full Animal Crossing experience. And the same goes for the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, and eighth players as well. This is up to 8 players who can inhabit the same island, but everyone besides the first resident will just have a much more limited experience. Here's a more recent article by news outlet Kotaku that further highlighted this with a headline that reads, "It sucks being player 2 in Animal Crossing." And then the body of this article reads, "New Horizons lets you make one island per Switch and up to 8 players can live on it together, but only one of those players can be what Nintendo calls first resident, meaning the player who originally creates and names the island. That's the player who's able to advance the game's story, choose where other villagers live, and order new upgrades for buildings. While the other players can make their own characters and get their own homes to live in, they're cut out of most of the interesting decision-making and stuck waiting for the main character to blaze a path forward." This just feels like a woefully unnecessary restriction that could be mitigated with more modern, design sensibilities. This just feels so antiquated. Even the very first Animal Crossing for GameCube did it better, as highlighted by Kotaku here. This reads, "It's all a far cry from the days of the original Animal Crossing on GameCube, where players could share a town or create their own on a separate memory card and then visit one another." Now, it is highlighted right here how Animal Crossing New Leaf for 3DS, the previous entry, did also have the 1 town per copy restriction. But keep in mind that 3DS was a portable console where you essentially had 1 per person. The Switch is half portable console, half home console. Some people do purchase Switch to be a home console that the entire household uses. So it is, I think, less acceptable for the Switch version to have that kind of restriction. And not to mention that the 3DS still handled it better, in the sense that you could still have 1 console and just buy separate copies, whereas with Switch, you cannot do that. It is per Switch rather than per copy of the game. So the Switch version is somehow a downgrade, even though it is more of a home console, more of a communal type of console than the 3DS was. It's just a very strange thing. It feels like 8 years later with this new sequel, there should be better ways to handle this whole save file restriction thing. Like, I understand part of it may have to do with trying to prevent people from cheesing the game in some ways, but generally speaking, I think most people will agree that these restrictions are too much and that there is a better way to design the system. And so that brings us to the user reviews here on Metacritic, with a lot of people saying that as far as local multiplayer goes, the way Nintendo implemented this system, the way it's so restrictive, flat out ruins things for the second player or for both players who actually do want to play together and be able to contribute to the island with the same level of access. So here's one user who said, while the game itself is great, really relaxing and gorgeous, I can't ignore one thing that ruins the whole experience for me and a lot of other people as seen by the different user reviews. That thing is that you only have one island per console. The decision limits to one person being able to enjoy the full experience. It also nukes any creative control of the island since you have the other users' house and furniture. I hope Nintendo can soon fix this big issue because for now, this killed any intentions I had to play the game. So that user gave the game a 5 out of 10, and then here's a user who gave the game a 4, saying, it's a fun game, very reminiscent of the old Animal Crossing games. However, the inability for users of the same Switch to have different islands isn't cool. In fact, only the first player on the Switch can complete assignments from Tom Nook and other characters. Not even a second copy of the game will rectify this. The only way to rectify it is to buy another Switch. Nintendo's being very greedy in limiting the game like this, and for that reason, I give this game a 4. Now, I happen to be one of those people who just play single player, so I've had no issues with the game. But for the people who do play multiplayer, yeah, I think these criticisms are valid. I'm not one to engage in review bombings per se. I don't think this game deserves a 0. It's still a really good game, in my personal opinion. But these criticisms are 100% valid, and I do think Nintendo should be called out for this, and I do hope Nintendo does update the game to better reflect the kind of experience that Animal Crossing is, the kind of communal experience that it encourages. This just feels like such a Nintendo issue. They've always been pretty behind when it comes to online features and certain conveniences that other platforms and consoles have caught up on very quickly. Nintendo's always lagging behind in these types of things. And I can certainly understand the sentiment that it feels like Nintendo's being greedy with how they're forcing you to purchase a second, not just a copy of Animal Crossing, but a second Switch, like a full new console, in order to have your own island. Again, I'm loving Animal Crossing New Horizons. I think it's a fantastic game. It's just hampered by that one aspect that I hope Nintendo can rectify with a better solution, because it's the only thing that's holding this game back from being like just the perfect Animal Crossing experience. So this is one man's take on this whole situation. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Animal Crossing New Horizons and its multiplayer and save file restrictions. Have they affected you in a drastic way? Has it hampered your experience in a tangible way, or have you been doing fine with this title? Drop a comment below sharing your experience with the title, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.